I'm saying to you, brother, and this is what I said to him, you must be intentional about building relationship with your brother. What if all of our political leaders were intentional about building relationships on the other side? What if they said, how do we go and build a relationship and love our brother and love our sister? What if we were intentional about it? Can you imagine what's going to happen here? And so as much as we want to rebuild, if we can't build relationship, it's just not going to work. I don't care how many building projects we do, if we don't rebuild relationship, if we don't rebuild trust and love and respect, and I've only seen that happen in our political circles in the United States one time, and it was back in 1992, when President Bill Clinton, a Democrat, met with the Speaker, a Republican, and they came to the conclusion that we will not speak negatively of one another in public. We will not turn our backs on one another, but we will commit to love one another. They built a relationship, and the last time in 1992 in U.S. history, we balanced the budget with the two of them. God does great things when we come together. That God is calling us, not only that we build relationships in the diaspora, but we build relationships with one another. So some of you might say, well, Rickey, how does that fit me personally? What about the parent who hasn't seen their child in a long time? What if you said, hey, how do I rebuild the relationship? Or what about if you've gone through a divorce and you've not spoken to your ex? What about saying, how do I build a bridge? What about the neighbor that you don't really like? How do you begin to build relationships? What about your Gen Z? How do you build the bridge? You know, I have children. I have 5 children, 4 boys and 1 girl. What's fortunate is my 1 girl can beat up all of her brothers, but I have 5 children. And I remember last year coming to the prayer breakfast. And when my brother Earl and I got back home, we saw the Gen Z's frustration. And Earl asked, Rick, what do you think the problem is? What Gen Z is dying, and I'm talking because I have Gen Zs. They're dying to be loved. They're dying for a seat at the table. They're dying to be respected. And I won't ever forget when my boys were growing up, because sometimes as parents, we want our children to stay children all of their lives. But that's not the case with Gen Zers. Gen Zers have grown up, they've gone to college. Some of our Gen Zers are smarter than we are. I have a daughter, she's a doctor. Whenever I need advice on my health, I don't go to a hospital, I call my daughter. Whenever I want to invest my money, I don't go in and go to a bank, I call my son Caleb. When I need counseling and when I need therapy, no, I don't go to a psychologist, I go to my son Micah. Because all of my children have grown up. And they're no longer children. They're adults. And I had to learn to treat them like adults. And so when they graduated from college, I took each of them out to dinner. And I gave them a kiss. And I said, you are now an adult. I expect you to make decisions like an adult. I don't have to go and live anywhere in your neighborhood. None of my kids live within 1,000 miles of where I live. But they all act like adults. And one of the most frustrating things that could happen to a Gen Zer is that you keep treating them like a child. And I got to tell you, I started praying for Kenya. Because, I work with young people. I mentor young people. I understand a little bit about their minds. And one of the things I prayed for is I said, here's my prayer. I said, Lord, I pray the adults would apologize to our Gen Zers. I pray, see, it's like African Americans. We live in America, but a lot of times we don't feel respected. And people ask, why is there always a race issue in America? Yeah, I can tell you why. Because no one's ever apologized. No one's ever said, I'm sorry for the horrific pain that you experienced. They've never done it in our history in this country. And I just want to suggest to you, when we're talking about relationships and we're talking about really rebuilding relationships, wouldn't it be beautiful if leaders would stand up and say to our Gen Zs, we had you arrested, and we know that had to be traumatizing, and we're sorry. We shut down the internet, and we know that that's your primary source of communication, and we're sorry. Now we want to bring you to the table so that you can have a voice, because you're no longer a child, you're an adult. And we want to begin to say, how do we begin to treat you like an adult? I won't ever forget the time, and I'm almost done. I won't ever forget the time when a guy gave me permission to be an adult. I was in the NFL, my first year in the NFL. We had a coach he was a German guy by the name of Marty Schottenheimer. And when I got to Cleveland, I would go in, and when I would see the head coach, Marty Schottenheimer, I would say, hey, how are you doing, Coach Schottenheimer? And he looked back at me and he said, I'm doing fine. How are you doing, Player Bolden? And the next day I would see him and I said, well, Coach Schottenheimer. And he would say, okay, Player Bolden. And after about a week, I went to him and I said, why do you keep calling me Player Bolden? He said, Rickey, you're an adult now. You don't have to call me Mr. Schottenheimer. You don't have to call me Coach Schottenheimer. You can refer to me as Marty. That's my name. You are a man now. I expect you to act like a man. And that's what our Gen Zers are crying for. They're crying for the right to be adults because they are. They've gone to college. They're buying their own house. They're getting married. They're adults. And I want to encourage you even here today, Kenya. I challenge you that when we start talking about rebuilding relationships, then the question is, how do we begin to rebuild the relationships with our Gen Zers? Because they love you, they care for you, they respect you, but they don't feel respected. The last thing, and I'm leaving now, but you know, there was one other thing as I'm leaving, and I don't want to get out of here. The last relationship that I think you need to build, not only with Africans in the diaspora, not only Africans within your own country, but as I was leaving, I said, you must also build relationships, really rebuild your relationship with the Lord. That is serious. Did you hear what this wonderful man, Nehemiah, said? Listen to what he said here. And I'm on my way out of here. You know, my time is up. Yep, my time is up. Let me tell you what he said here. This was so critical. He says, I also told them about the gracious hand of my God on me and what the king had said to me. Did you see that? When I read that, it blew my mind. Let me tell you how I interpreted that. As I take my seat, whenever people do that, they're really not getting ready to, yes, I am going to take my seat. But listen to what Nehemiah was saying. He said, I spoke to the king, but the King of Kings had his hand on me. Oh, that's different. Because while he honored and respected the king, as you go forth, Kenya, there's a King of Kings. And what we desire more than anything is that the King of Kings places his hand on our lives. And when you have the hand of the King of Kings on your lives will be blessed, and Kenya will never be the same. God bless you. God keep you.
Our neighbors from Tanzania, if we have wronged you in any way, forgive us. Our friends from Uganda, if there is anything that Kenyans have done that's not right, we want to apologize if there is anything. To our children, if there is any misstep, we apologize. To our neighbors, if there is any misstep that we have done, you know, we want to build the relationship that will make our country great and will take us forward. And to each and every one of us, you know, I know today God in his own way has made it possible for us to build the bridges between our political parties. We now have a broad-based government that brings us more people, more citizens, more into one ecosystem that we can plan together, we can work together for the greater good of our nation. And I want to remind you, great people of my country, the words of Psalms 133, verses 1, 2, and 3. And I want to paraphrase to say that the Word of God tells us how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to live together in unity. It is in God's perfect will and plan for us to live together in unity across political divides, across our communities, across our religious divides. We live together in unity because there is a reason. Verse 3 says, where there is unity, God commands a blessing. There is a dividend for unity, and that dividend is God's blessing.
At Full Gospel Church, Mogoda, with the MP. As they were leaving, a silver Subaru Forester, registration number KBP 096W, approached the main entrance. And the two heavily built men burdened the MP into the vehicle. He reported the incident at Mogoda Police Station. Additionally, on May 26, 2025, he received a call from the MP's daughter, Wajiro, informing him that the MP had been found in a coffee farm in Juja. They then took the MP to Princefield Hospital, Ruto, for first aid before he was referred to Karen Hospital for further management. Cyrus Kiero Moher, an RI of Honorable Koibori, who also runs a supermarket at Kahawa West area, stated that on 24th May 2025, he received a call from Peter Kirato, who is also the CDF chairman of Juja, requesting the use of a Subaru Forester registration numbers KDG 803B to transport additional security personnel for the MP during an event in the Full Gospel Church, Mogoda, at the Hiabli. On 25th May 2025, Kerato instructed him to go to his homestead in Mogoda, where he met a man named Katana, driving Kerato's vehicle registration number KBP 096, which is a Honda CRV, along with 3 unknown men. They proceeded to the church to familiarize themselves the route before returning. Later, Kerato called and instructed him to drive his Subaru Forester with 2 men towards the church. Upon arrival, the 2 men exited quickly, and he heard screams as the MP was forced into the vehicle. They drove towards Jacaranda Coffee Research via Kabogo Road, where the MP instructed them to stop near a waiting Honda CRV, registration number KBP 096W. This vehicle belongs to Kerato. Cyrus was left with the 2 men who warned him not to disclose any information to the police. The police have managed to recover 2 vehicles, a Honda Civic CRV, registration number KBP 096W, belonging to Peter Kerato, who is also the 3rd chairman of Juja, and a Subaru Forester, silver in color, registration number KDG 803B, belonging to Cyrus Kiero Moya. Additionally, 1 suspect, Karaja Gatana, has been arrested. Katana admitted to dropping the MP at a hotel where he had refreshments and spent the night with 2 abductors on 25th May 2025 following the alleged abduction. He admitted that on 26th May 2025, while using Kerato's vehicle, that is the Honda CRV, he picked up the MP from the hotel and took him to the scene where they claimed he had been dumped. Before the MP exited the motor vehicle, he helped him tear his clothes to fake evidence of torture by the alleged abductors. National Police Service further appeals for the public's continued support and encourages anyone with information that may assist the investigations to report to the nearest police stations or through our toll-free numbers. Again, 999 911 112, alifichua kwa DCI numbers 0800 722 203. We assure the public of our steadfast commitment to resolving this case, and we will provide further updates as the investigation progresses. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the gentlemen will take at most 3 questions from ladies and gentlemen.
My name is David from the Daily Nation. My question is one, because actually there are allegations that Mugidi Singer has been, or popularly known as Salvador, has been transferred in what was the punishment and action. One of his recent song of so I don't know what you want to say about this. Kwa majina naitwa Rickey.